Hey everybody, welcome back to 5 disturbing, creepy, paranormal, and just spine-chilling posts that I read and narrate from Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a like, and if you enjoyed this kind of content, please don't forget to subscribe. I make videos pertaining to horror narrations, creepy things, disturbing experiences, and just weird things that I find from around the internet. So if you're into that kind of content, I look forward to you joining the family. I hope that you enjoy this video. I posted about my stalker on Reddit, and he found it. Quick backstory, I've had a stalker for about 4 years. He was never aggressive or sent me proper threats, so stubborn as I am, I did my best to ignore him and not to give him the satisfaction of showing him any fear. To be honest, after a while I also wasn't scared anymore, since he almost never came close to me. I know being stalked can affect people severely, even in a case like mine, and that's totally valid, but I guess I just got lucky and was never really psychologically affected by it. His stalking behavior mostly just consisted of sending me letters and gifts, such as photos of my own apartment building from the outside, things he dug out of my trash can, and so on. I called the police many times, but they weren't able to, or really tried, to catch or identify him. About 3 weeks ago, I discovered the German version of the I Am a Reddit community, and thought that people might want to know about what it's like to have a stalker. Since I barely use any social media aside from Reddit and I have no personally identifying information here, I didn't think he'd ever see it. One person even asked, does he know you're putting him on blast on Reddit? And I answered, maybe. Maybe it would make him angry. Maybe he'd be turned on. Don't know, don't care. Well, I know the real answer now. He did see it, and he did not like it. Like I said, he was never aggressive and never came close to me. The closest I know of was when he sent me a picture of myself unlocking my apartment door, taken from the corner of the steps above. But I consider myself a pretty vigilant person, and I'm thinking that he might have hid a camera there instead of being there to take the photo himself. I think I would have noticed him if he did. I don't know how he got the wind of the MA, but he did. The next week was quiet. No letters, and I didn't see him anywhere. Then, he left me letters with printed out questions and my answers from the MA. He also left me a long hateful letter towards my boyfriend about an issue I had posted on the German version of AITA. His letters were never hateful, like that before, though he never seemed happy with my boyfriend. He wrote about how I should share the spotlight with him since I got so much attention thanks to him. A few days later, I got a gift. But this time, he didn't leave it in my mailbox, or at my car, like he usually did. No, this time he left it inside my apartment building, right in front of my door. I didn't take it inside my apartment, but opened it outside. It was a pretty big box, which was also unusual, and it was taped shut. As I'm typing this out, I realized that wasn't a good idea at all, and could have ended badly for me, but luckily, he didn't send me a bomb or anything. He did, however, send me several zip ties, a roll of tape, the kind you use to tape off walls when painting, nothing you could use to restrain someone, a TV remote with most buttons picked off, a pack of band-aids with a few used ones, not actually, just made to look that way according to the police, as well as a framed picture of me. I could tell the picture was taken a few days ago, and my boyfriend was next to me but cut out of the photo. The frame was shattered, and the package was full of glass shards, clearly more than what could have just fallen out of the frame, and they were also intentionally put inside the crumbled newspaper that was stuffed in there to keep it all in place. I called the police right away and gave it to them. They were more concerned this time, finally, and told me they'd send patrol cars more frequently. He didn't show up or leave me any letters or gifts for about another week and a half, but 8 days ago, it started again. I found letters in my mailbox where he wrote about how he wasted his time on me, how I haven't been appreciating his efforts, how he was wrong about me being special. 5 days ago, I left my apartment in the morning and heard a crunch sound as I stepped on my doormat. He put broken glass under it during the night. I went off to work because I was in a hurry and was just going to make my boyfriend call the police, but then I found my car had also been vandalized. The sides were scratched, lights smashed, and the windshield had a phrase painted on it. "It's time soon, miss," and then my last name. I went back inside and called the cops myself. They found the same phrase on a note under the doormat. This time, they really took me seriously, which might have been because I was just pissed at this point, which I made very clear. If for some reason you're like me and are just too stubborn to be afraid of a stalker like mine, then all of this, the letters, gifts, photos, even the damn glass under my doormat, are just really annoying and inconvenient. But my car was useless to me now, and the threat scared even me. I did, however, have a dash cam in my car, and it caught everything. The police took the footage as evidence, even though the dashcam footage wasn't of high quality, and I'd given them photos of him that were just as good before, but they said it's not enough. And they told me they'll look into it further and promised to send more patrol cars again. Then it was quiet for 2 more days. Until 2 days ago, someone rang the doorbell at just after 4 a.m. My boyfriend and I got up, but we were both hesitant. But I saw blue lights outside, and just as I got up I heard them shouting, "This is the police, please open the door." They told us they were called by one of our downstairs neighbours, who came home from his night shift about an hour earlier and heard someone else enter the building after them before the door fell shut. My neighbours know of my situation, and I've asked them to make sure they don't let strangers into the building. This neighbour then went into his own apartment and looked through the peephole. We have motion activated lights in the stairway, so he waited to see if they turned back on. They did. Then he saw a middle-aged man walk upstairs. Above this neighbour are only me and my boyfriend, and a single mom with 3 kids, who probably won't be getting any visitors at 3 a.m. So he called the police. They came and found my stalker, 1 half floor above me on the stairs. He should have been able to see the cop cars since there's a little window up there, and they had their lights on, but he either missed them or wanted to get caught. They found a pocket knife on him, and he confessed to being my stalker right away. He's finally caught. They got him. It took 4 years, a provocative Reddit post, and 1 very vigilant and caring neighbour. But he's finally done. For now, at least. He's facing several charges, and I've collected every single piece of evidence over the past 4 years. I don't know what kind of outcome I can expect, but for now, I've finally got some peace. I had an argument with a murderer. To give a little context, I used to work in an apartment complex. As a result, I've had my fair share of creepy encounters. Most residents keep to themselves and don't cause issues, probably about 95% of them. But the other 5% took up almost all of my time. Isaac was one of the 5%. When he first rented his apartment, he definitely had stoner vibes, but he was nice enough and passed his background check. Almost immediately, however, he started causing issues. The lady next door complained she could smell his smoke constantly. The guy downstairs complained he could hear his stereo all hours of the day and night. Another resident accused him of following him home one night. The police were regularly there, breaking up fights between him and his girlfriends. We caught him hiding 2 large dogs in his apartment, and he regularly let them run loose, which ultimately resulted in another dog and 2 people getting attacked. He accidentally discharged a gun in his apartment once. Needless to say, he caused a lot of issues. At first he was very apologetic and said he would make an effort to remedy the problems, but things kept getting worse, and after a year of weekly calls or notices from the officers, he eventually became standoffish. One morning, I received a call from Isaac, letting me know he'd broken up with one of his girls and she wouldn't leave the apartment. He asked me to personally come up and remove her. I'm a small woman, so even if I wanted to take the risk, I physically wouldn't be capable of wrestling an angry woman out of his apartment. I suggested he call the police. He then asked if I could make a maintenance man come up to remove her. I offered to call the police on his behalf, but Isaac said he didn't want to involve them and hung up. A few hours later, Isaac came down to the office with a jump drive and said he needed to print out a 50+ page document. Residents weren't technically allowed to use our office printer, but on the rare occasion someone asked to, I usually didn't say no. It was an easy way to build a good report. But between Isaac becoming such a problem tenant and how large his document was, I told him I couldn't print his documents. I gave the excuse that our paper toner print story was monitored, and we would get in trouble for printing such a large document out for him. Not liking my answer, he started screaming about how it was bullshit. He accused me of being useless, bringing up my refusal to fight his ex and power tripping. He called me a effing bitch multiple times, and said someone needed to bring me down a peg. I was pretty over him at this point, and told him that if he was going to behave like a child, that he needed to leave. He told me I couldn't make him. Bluntly, I told him he would leave or I would call the police and have him removed. I also told him I would ban him from the office going forward. Normally I tried to kill the residents with kindness, but his lease was ending in a week and I didn't care anymore if he hated me. My threat seemed to work. He angrily knocked my pen holder over and slammed both doors hard as he left. The following morning, a cop was waiting for me when I got to work. He asked if Isaac was a resident and I confirmed he was. The officer explained that the body of a teen had been discovered the day before, and Isaac was their prime suspect. He was the last person to text the kid asking him to meet him where his body was found shortly after the message. The police believed Isaac had been paid to kill him. Based on the timing of the text and when the boy was discovered, Isaac would have had to have left my office and gone directly there. Ultimately, the police wanted to use Isaac's move-out day as an opportunity to try and catch him. To nobody's surprise, he didn't show up. When I walked to his apartment to inspect for damage, there was a lot. I found a bank receipt from the day of the murder. Someone has wired him $17,000. I thankfully never saw Isaac again. He was caught in another country a few months later and is now in prison. Being a good Samaritan almost put me and my 3-year-old daughter in danger. This is another story that happened on my rural country road about 6 months ago. I posted the first story, which happened in high school as well, but thought both stories were too long to include in one post. I should have made the title, Being a Good Samaritan put me and my 3-year-old daughter in danger. There was no almost to it, but can't figure out how to delete that word. So anyways, here is my story. I'm a single mom of a 3-year-old little girl. I'm so blessed that I have the most amazing parents, who live about 20 minutes away from me, who keep her when I need them to. I live in the city next to their rural area, and you have to go down a curvy, wooded, rural road to get to their house out in the country. My little girl had spent the night with them the night before, and I headed out to their house the next day around lunchtime to eat with them and bring her back to our house. It was a pretty day, sunny, a lot of bikers out though, so I was on high alert driving there, as anyone speeding and not paying attention could easily hit a biker, which is a big fear of mine. I got there fine, ate lunch with them, and was headed back to my house driving on the road, which I know like the back of my hand and typically speed on, knowing when to slow down and take certain curves, etc. My little girl requested I put on her favorite songs in the car, so I was kind of watching her sing as she sat in her car seat in the back of the car through my rearview mirror. As we drove back home, I caught a glimpse of something blue just up ahead on the edge of the woods near the road. I was going fast enough that the image didn't quite set in as I approached, then passed it. But right after passing it, my brain finally processed that it was a blue, older car. It was flipped upside down and was rammed into a tree. The road was empty, with only one house near, and there weren't any ambulances or cars near. So at first I was like, what the hell? Truly, the wreck didn't look like it had just happened, but I knew something was wrong in my gut. I pulled my phone out and called 911 as I kept driving, not fully processing that this has just happened. This is 911, what's your emergency? Hey, I'm driving down this road near this place, and I just passed a blue car flipped upside down, and it looks like they ran into a tree. There wasn't anyone visible near the car, and no other cars are around. I'm not sure if I was the first person on the scene or what. Then the 911 operator said, "What is your exact location? Is there a house close to the wreck? Try to find the nearest address. I'm sending an ambulance out now. Was anyone visibly hurt or present at the scene?" I replied with, "No, I didn't see anyone when I passed, but I'm not sure. I didn't get a super good look. I'm about 2 minutes down the road past the car now. let me turn around and go back. I have my 3-year-old little girl in the car with me, just letting you know. I don't necessarily want her to see anything traumatizing, but I'll do what I need to do if I find anyone. The car looked super bad. They responded with, "It's okay, don't get out of the car. Keep your doors locked. Just see if you can find the nearest address and I will stay on the phone with you the whole time." I turned around in the nearest driveway to me and drove back, speeding with my heart beating fast, as I now realized someone clearly might be severely hurt and I just passed them by not thinking I was the first person to arrive on the scene. I was scared, but in action mode, ready to deal with what I was potentially about to see inside the vehicle. When I got to the house I thought was closest to the wreck, the conversation picked back up with the operator. "Okay, I think I'm almost to the car. I see a mailbox coming up right here. Hang on. Okay, it's this road. That is the house, a little less from a mile from the car. I am headed from this way going towards this route. And I see the car right here coming up on my left, across from a sandpit looking area. It is a blue older 4-door car." They responded with, "Okay, great, an ambulance was just dispatched. It won't be long before they get there. Do you see anyone in or near the vehicle?" I responded with, "Oh my god, wait, yes. I see a man, around 25 to 30. He is standing in the middle of the road." I pull up next to the man with my doors locked, roll my window down with the phone still to my ear, and 911 listening to me speak. I immediately say, "Oh my god, are you okay? Is that your car?" The guy is slurring his words a little, clearly very injured, but still standing and not in critical condition. He says, "Yeah, I'm fine." That's when I notice a large wound on the side of his head with blood all over it. I say, "Oh my god, you're bleeding. You aren't okay. I'm on the phone with 911 right now. They are sending an ambulance. Don't move." I hear the 911 operator asking me if he was okay or if he was hurt in my ear. I say, "No, he isn't. He is bleeding from his head, but he is standing in the road." I see the guy's face go from concerned about getting help to fully panicked and flat. He says, "Is that 911 on the phone? Hang up. I need you to drive me up the road right now. Hang up the phone." The operator hears him say this and she says, "Is your daughter in the vehicle with you?" I say, "Yes. I can't drive this man anywhere. I am not letting him in my car, especially with my little girl in here." Meanwhile, my daughter is silent in the back seat, taking everything happening in. That's when I look down and notice the man isn't wearing shoes. He is standing with bare feet, and there is a large wet stain on his blue jeans, which I immediately realize is pee. I can smell alcohol on him, and he isn't even standing that close to me. I work in the medical field, and I deal with traumatic brain injury patients often, so I immediately wondered if he maybe had some kind of brain damage from the impact, and began telling the operator, "No, he isn't okay, I think he is hurt." I look at the man staying as calm and matter-of-fact as I can and tell him, "I'm so sorry, but I can't drive you anywhere. My little girl's in the back seat and I don't feel comfortable doing that. I didn't see anyone in the vehicle when I passed, so I'd already called 911. I think you need to let them come. I can't let you in my car, but I will park over there and make sure you're okay until they get here." The man is visibly panicked and now pissed off. He starts yelling, "Tell them not to effing come, hang up the phone." My heart literally stopped beating. I began slowly and gently pressing the gas, rolling past him to indicate I am leaving. The 911 operator in my ear says, "Pretend to tell me not to come. Pretend to hang up with me, but keep me on the line." So that is exactly what I do. I say, "Hey, I think he's okay. He says he doesn't need any medical help. He lives really close to here, so actually don't send the ambulance out. Sorry for the miscommunication." "Okay, thanks so much," and then I fake hang up. I set my phone face down in the passenger seat and tell him that I was going to go now, but that I hoped he was going to be okay. That's when I noticed his pocket bulging with something silver peeking out. I knew right then this man was armed, and I had to get the hell out of there. I smiled and said I was sorry I couldn't help, then quickly rolled my window up and sped off, turning around further down the road and passing him again at 65 to 70 miles per hour on a 45 mile per hour road. I was crying hysterically, and I pick up the phone to tell the 911 operator what had just happened. She said, "It's okay. You did the right thing. You played it cool and appeased him. We have the address and the ambulance is less than 5 minutes away." As she asked me for my name and identifying information, I see and hear sirens further up ahead. Thank God for that 911 operator coaching me through the situation. I still don't know what happened to the man, but I do know that he was clearly intoxicated, dangerous, and fully panicked, which is a scary combination that will make people do things without thinking clearly in an instant. My little girl asked, "Mommy, was that man hurt? I saw a boo-boo on his head." I just said, "Yeah, he's okay. He got a boo-boo and I think he was playing and bumped into a tree. A nurse is going to give him a band-aid. I sure am glad we could help him." She was satisfied and smiled, continuing to listen to the music and sing when I turned the radio back on. A terrifying and creepy-ass encounter, to say the least. My experiences with the Bell Witch haunting. I live in Adams, Tennessee, growing up from about ages 14 to 18, which is from 2004 to 2008. A couple of weeks after my family and I moved there, something unexpected happened. I was mowing on my dad's tractor with a big 8-foot wide back end mower. I was going down a hill when my horizon line violently was thrown around as the tractor tires hit something. My blood went cold as I looked up through the swathe I had just cut. Like a buzzer going down the middle of someone's head, making a lane in the grass. In that lane were 4 Native American burial graves. My parents started reaching out to anyone who might be able to help us identify the graves. Anthropologists, historians, accredited people, etc. Those people unanimously agreed that these 4 graves were from the Trail of Tears. They corroborated this from what I remember because of how the graves were laid, very, very shallow with a giant slab of stone where a gravestone would be. The fact that they were interned on a hillside to keep the water from sinking in and raising the bodies since they had to bury them so quickly, and many other reasons. I consider myself a very logically driven and rationally minded person. Basically, I let my empirical senses try to explain something before I'll open myself to other possibilities. Yet, there were things that happened to me and my whole family that we weren't able to rationalize with a scientific mindset or anything logical. Event 1. The activity in our house started shortly after the mowing incident. We heard heavy knocking and pounding on the brick outer wall of the house, encircling the house. No matter where you were in the house, you could hear the knocking. Some nights, I would hear running footsteps accompanying the pounding. This activity happened nearly every night. As the nights passed, I started feeling a heavy presence in my room, a suffocating one, like a heavy weight sitting on my solar plexus constantly. Whatever was happening decided to latch onto me. Event 2. Things continued to escalate. One night, I was letting my golden retriever out to go pee. We had a ranch-style house overlooking the Red River. The door we were exiting was on the back side of the house facing the river. As I opened the door, I started hearing faint whispering, something akin to leaves being blown or scratching across the ground. I looked up at the trees to see if the wind was blowing. Everything was perfectly still. It was fall in Tennessee, so tons of leaves were on the ground. They were not moving either. The scratching and blowing leaves noise continued, but as it continued, it grew closer and louder. It sounded like a language of some sort, like how you'd imagine an incantation or something nefarious in the tone of the sound. I looked down at my golden retriever. All of the hair on her back was standing up, and she was snarling like a rabid wolf, yet not barking, just kind of frozen in a fear response. I started getting extremely nauseous and could smell sulfur. I was completely frozen when my dog launches herself through the door's threshold and starts gnashing her teeth mid-air, snarling and chomping. The voices were now coming from directly in front of me. I could hear them as if someone was standing there, a foot or 2 away. I grabbed my dog mid-air and pulled her quickly inside, slammed the door, and threw the deadbolt into place. The door and frame shook violently as a vicious pounding started hammering on the threshold. I ran with my dog to the center of the house, flipping on every light along the way. We sat there alone all night until the sun came up. Ginger, my golden retriever, laid across my lap the entire night, pressing into me while she whimpered for hours. All I could do was pet her and try to calm her down, which was also helping me downregulate. This was impossible though. The entire night until sunrise, the back door was thumping. Event 3. It happened when I was coming home from football practice. I had all my gear in a gym bag over my left shoulder. This is important because of how I entered the house. As I closed the front door behind me, I began sitting down the gear bag from my left side, which caused me to look right. The room where you first walked in was our library, where we had a leather couch, chair, piano, bookshelves, and a wooden rocking chair. There was something sitting in the rocking chair. My peripheral vision caught it first, the chair going back and forth. As my vision centered on the chair, there was a humanoid-looking shape sitting there, head glancing downward at the book it was holding. Long black hair, drawn down over its head, and completely void of light. To picture what I saw, imagine the silhouette of a person, but rather a void of light. The light coming in around the edges of it seemed to be eaten up by the presence or void, as the light spilled over the contour edges of the humanoid shape. Kind of like how black holes are visualized, almost exactly. It felt like I had jumped off a bridge into ice-cold water. I blasted myself backwards against the door, screaming, and fell down. As I was falling, I saw the void blur suddenly as it shot across the walls of the house, out through a huge bay window overlooking the river. My golden retriever was in the next room, and she sprinted to chase the shadow across the walls, barking and clawing at the walls. After it left through the window, my dog came to me and laid on my lap until my parents got home. Event 4. I was fishing with my cousin, Jack, on the river by our house. We were right on the bend of a river, so the moon would be shining on both sides of the river, racing out at two lines like a 90-degree angle from the house. Super beautiful when you weren't on edge. The reason I bring this up, there was a lot of light on the river that evening. Jack was about 10 or so at the time. He reaches up and taps me. "Does that lady need help?" I looked to where he was pointing, and there was a pale woman dressed in white clothes going back and forth picking up stones just to the left of us across the river. I had seen her many times before around the property, and whenever I would get close, she would disappear behind a tree or something similar would happen. Knowing this, I told Jack as calmly as I could that it was time for dinner and he needed to go up to my mom immediately in an attempt not to scare him. When I walked him up and made sure he was on his way, I looked back over and she was gone, but I could hear a splashing in the water below. Event 5. Myself, my dad, his friends, and some other family members were staked out along the river bend on the gravel bar beneath the rise to our house. Nothing out of the ordinary at first. It was July 4th and we were having an actual good time for a change. We were all spread out about 15 yards from each other. Each man had a low-end gas Coleman lantern. As the sun was setting, my dad looks over at me like something was bugging him. He told me later he felt like someone had just thrown a bucket of ice water over him before it began. The sun had just gone down when this happened. In unison, all the lanterns were cranked up full blast. They just as quickly became barely a flame. Then the fires roared to life again. Down to barely a flame, roared to life, then they went completely out. Right as the flames went out, we heard the most godforsaken scream by some woman across the river. Whatever it was kept on screaming despite our best attempts to call out to help. As her scream reached a crescendo, it sounded like what I could only imagine a person's throat being cut interrupted her scream. The sound of a dead weight fall of a human body tumbled down the hillside across from us and splashed violently into the water. At this point, all the guys had their flashlights out. That's when something started swimming and splashing around in the water on both sides of the riverbed. The splashing receded towards the opposite gravel bar, and whatever it was got out and started pacing back and forth across the rocks there. We were pointing all of our flashlights to where the sound was coming from, but we couldn't identify where it was originating. It's safe to say we were running up the hill at this point. We all got inside the house, locked the doors, then gathered in the central living room. Nobody wanted to leave for fear of what was outside. We all stayed up that night because the wall pounding was more violent than it had ever been. Bam, bam, bam. All night, like the ticking of some demonic clock. I didn't sleep for 2 days after this event. Event 6. Lost time. I was walking through the woods near the Bell Witch Cave. One moment it was completely sunny with blue skies around mid-afternoon. The next moment it was overcast and looked like maybe 4 p.m. Event 7. Night terrors. Torture dreams, being held down and brutally drawn and quartered. Dreams of walking through the house and the void person placing their hand on my chest and pushing through my solar plexus. My body violently shaking in the dream like having a seizure. Event 8. Visiting the Bell House / plantation marker in a tobacco field adjacent to my family's property. I brought friends to try prove that something crazy was happening to my family. The rite of passage in the area is to go to the stone marker where the paranormal events happened hundreds of years ago, then dance on the stone saying, "I don't believe in the Bell Witch." I got them to promise that they wouldn't do that while we went. Of course, the moment we get there, one guy who doubted the legends in a massive way jumps up onto the stone marker and starts screaming, "I don't believe in the Bell Witch," as loud as he could. I get so upset with him. I'm the only one that knows the way back, so I said, "Come on guys, we're leaving." In this area, it's known as the Tennessee River Valley, so there's tons of water flowing, etc. around these tobacco fields. The reason this is important is because of what happened next. We're making good time walking back across the crop field, hundreds of yards long. The mist starts rolling in from the river bends and begins to saturate the field. The temperature drops easily 25 degrees or so, and we start seeing our breath. I begin to smell sulfur in the breeze. As the mist became a fog, it began. I started hearing this wheezy and deeply cavernous sounding breath around us, like being inside a cave that was breathing. Out of nowhere, we started hearing these giant blasting sounds, and I realized something was walking out of the chopped tobacco stalks. Side note, when they harvest tobacco, they used a machete and cut down at a 45-degree angle, leaving about 3.5 feet of brittle stalk poking out of the ground. When you step on said stalks, they disintegrate in a very loud way as they burst apart. This starts happening all around us, like an army of native spirits running around as if we were in a bandwagon battle. The blasts were coming from every single direction in the fog. That's when I hear it. That deep, cavernous noise turns into this giant sniffing sound, like some Lovecraftian beast smelling its prey just out of eyesight. At this point, I yell "run" in a pure panic mode. We take off across the field, trying not to trip and be skewered on the stalks. They dry out and get really sharp when they harvest them. Also, Robertson County is the world's largest producer of tobacco per square mile, so these fields are everywhere. As we are exiting the field and our feet hit the gravel road, the lower center part of my back suddenly explodes in agony. I look down and there's a massive rock laying at my feet, and I realize that I had just been assaulted. By the time I got to my house and examined my back in the mirror, the bruise was about the size of a basketball and was already turning black. Event 8. I woke up outside at about 3 in the morning. I was laying next to the 4 graves on the property. The night was awfully cold, but I woke up soaked in sweat. We lived there for so long that I have many events to share, process, and willing to have discussions about my time there with you all. It is really hard for me to talk about this stuff without re-traumatizing myself, but my friends and family are encouraging me to share my experiences with like-minded people so I can try to find peace surrounding my trauma. Thank you for reading. The time I was almost abducted by a serial killer. In February of 2012, I went to visit my grandfather's grave for his birthday. His death was a really hard thing for me to deal with, as he had died on March of 2011 and was still very fresh to me. I was kneeling in front of his grave with my head down, mourning and crying, when my body went into full dangers close by mode. I looked up to see a man running full sprint from the woods surrounding the cemetery and forced myself to get to my truck as quickly as possible, without the man getting too close to me. By the time I made it to my truck, he had gotten about 50 feet from me. I jumped in and locked the door, much to his apparent displeasure. He threw his hands up in a huff like his favorite team had just lost a football game. I started the truck and started to drive out as fast as I could, but not before driving right past him. I didn't break eye contact for a second, and neither did he, so I got a really good look at his face. Cut to a few years later, I'm at work bored and decided to download an app that had a ton of paranormal, cryptid, serial killer, and UFO articles. As I was browsing through the serial killers, I came across one that made my heart drop into my ass. Israel Keyes, most known for murdering an underage girl in Alaska, dismembering her body and dropping the pieces into a frozen lake. He would bury killed kids in places long before he ever committed the crimes. After the incident in Alaska, he had traveled into Texas for a wedding in a city not too far from where I live, and had disappeared for a bit, and no one in his family knew where he was. He was arrested in that city and brought to the prison one city over from me, before he was extradited back to Alaska to stand trial. About a year ago, I found a book about him that provided a lot of the details I've given here. He had been killing for years, and no one knows what the actual death toll is. He eventually killed himself in prison. At the end of the book about him, he describes some of his favorite places to abduct people, public parks, and cemeteries. I often wonder if there's a kid buried in those woods. You were fast, Israel, but I was faster, and I'm glad we didn't officially meet. Edit. The app I was on doesn't seem to exist anymore. It was called Paranormal News, but the one in the Google Play Store isn't the same one. For clarification, I wasn't super far away from my truck, maybe 30 feet, so I didn't have to go far, but I damn near levitated there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more spooky, scary content. See you next week for another video. I hope you have an awesome day.